The Declaration on the Rights and Responsibility of Individuals, Article 18, subsection 3 declares the following. Individuals, that includes you who are listening and watching this video, you're an individual human being, an individual man or woman. Therefore, it applies to you. Individuals, groups, institutions, and non-governmental organizations. Well, that would also include Meta and Microsoft and Google and X Corporation. You fall under this too. They also have an important role and responsibility in contributing, as appropriate, to the promotion of the right of everyone to a social and international order in which the rights and freedoms set forth in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and other human rights instruments can be fully realized. A lot of us think that law is something that exists just in our domestic laws, just in our country, that's the order and construction of law. But here we're learning and realizing, right, that through the international covenants, through the international laws, there is an international order that is in operation. It's an international order of laws that are in operation, which respect human rights. And it is an international order, right? So that denotes and shows us a hierarchy. It shows us a controlling factor. For something to have order, right? It has to be controlled. If it was not controlled, it would be chaos. So therefore, this international order is operating under a control mechanism, a controlling power. So human rights are not just arbitrary. It's not just flip a coin and decide, do I have a human right or don't I have a human right? That's not how the international order operates. There's a governing structure in operation. And this governing structure is called the rule of law. The principles of fundamental justice and judges and the justice system are bound to the rule of law. And the government and government actors and agents are bound to the rule of law. And being bound to something means that what you are bound to is controlling you. It has the authority over you. And for the individual, right here, this article of law states to the promotion of the right of everyone to an international order. So you have a right to the international order, and a right is something you must exercise. It's an entitlement. You have the right to stand under the international order and stand under your human rights. Right now, the majority of those who would listen to this video are not standing under the international order. They are standing under domestic statutory laws, the laws that are controlling them and are being used against them are domestic laws, laws created by the government, by legislation. And many of these laws, if not most of these laws, are against the international order. The International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, the preamble, considering the obligation of the states, the obligations of the countries. Well, what obligation? Well, the obligation to the international order, correct? And this obligation under the Charter of the United Nations to promote universal respect for and observance of human rights and freedoms. So, like I said, it's not just a suggestion. This is a legal obligation. It's a legal obligation and duty of our countries to the international order. And the obligation and the duty that the country has is to promote the respect for, but not only to respect, and the observance of, the action, the doing of human rights and freedoms. The preamble of the DRR brings this accountability, brings this international order forward more clearly. where it states stressing that all members of the international community shall fulfill jointly and separately their solemn obligation. So it's not a choice, right? It's an obligation. It places a legal responsibility on our countries to promote and encourage respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms, reiterating that all human rights and fundamental freedoms are universal. So these are universal principles. And where do they come from? Well, that's up to you to determine. But nevertheless, the international order that is in operation has declared these human rights to be universal in their nature, indivisible, interdependent, and interrelated, and should be promoted and implemented in a fair and equitable manner without prejudice to the implementation of each of those rights and freedoms. So, the law is telling us, the international order is telling us, you cannot prejudice those rights. You cannot take actions aimed at the destruction of those rights. And that's your obligation, not a suggestion. And this is a universal principle. And you, state parties, you, country actors, you, government agents, are bound to this operation of law. You are bound to the rule of law, stressing that the prime responsibility and duty to promote and protect human rights and fundamental freedoms lie with the state, lie with the country, lie with the government, lie with those in the position of government, in the offices of the government. That means every minister and every agent. You have a responsibility to promote and protect human rights. And if you fail in that responsibility, the rule of law is against all of you. And it's stated stressing the prime responsibility. Well, using that terminology, right, opens this up because for there to be a prime responsibility, it indicates and teaches us that there are secondary responsibilities. And we talked about that in the opening of this video, right? Where it said individuals, groups, institutions, and non governmental organizations also have an important role and responsibility in contributing to this international order. So, what's it saying to the individual? What's it saying to each and every one of us? Well, we have a responsibility to promote and enforce our human rights against all government actors and agents that would take actions aimed at the destruction of our rights, that would deny this international order, that would deny the truth of our absolute human rights. Considering that, in accordance with the principles proclaimed in the Charter of the United Nations, recognition of the inherent dignity and of the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. All right, so this verse is teaching us a lot, right? And it's saying a lot, more than people realize. Well, first thing, let me draw your attention to this. Every government actor and every government agent that is failing in their responsibility to promote and protect human rights, then are by default guilty, guilty of attacking freedom, justice, and peace in the world. And by default, from there, you are guilty of crimes against humanity because you are failing to respect the international order. You are failing in your duty and your obligation to promote and protect inalienable rights, absolute human rights that are attached and are possessed by every man or woman on earth. This universal order has declared and brought forth the obligation to recognition for every man and woman under this authority that they possess absolute human rights. And the exercise of these absolute human rights is what leads or promotes to the freedom, justice, and peace in the world. So if you place limitations and abridgments like you are doing through statutory law upon men and women to control them through impositions, you are breaching your international obligation. But it's worse than that, right? Because you're guilty of removing the freedom of a man or a woman to make their own choices, to exercise their right of self-determination through created laws that you call statutory law. You are directly attacking human rights, and you are directly attacking the international order. And there's nothing you can say, and there's nothing you can do at this point, because your intentions are very clear. You need only read through the statutory laws in Canada, and you will find systemic breaches of international order done on purpose, not fulfilling your obligation, attacking inalienable rights, attacking the freedom of men and women, removing their absolute rights against the rule of law and against the principles of fundamental justice. And look at the world, and look at the condition the world is in, and look at Canada and the society and what's going on. And you don't think this is a consequence of your actions, of your failure to respect international order? Well, it is. And the law has already told you so, because you're failing to fulfill your obligation and your duty to every man and woman in Canada, because you're guilty of limiting and abridging and removing their absolute human rights, their inalienable rights, their right to self-determination. And you're yoking up their life and controlling their life through restrictive laws, through statutory laws, adding impositions, adding duties to their life that yokes their life and destroys their freedom. And that's why the society is what it is. And all of you are to blame. And all of you who are partaking of this are to blame. Guilty under the rule of law for destroying the freedoms, for destroying justice, and for destroying peace in the world. Oh, what do you mean? I didn't do it. Oh, yes, you did. Every single one of you in a position of power, in a government office, as a government agent, you are directly responsible under the rule of law for what you are contributing and what you are creating on earth. So politicians, out there in Canada, you get your food paid for, right? You get your electricity paid for, right? You even get your living quarters paid for, right? How you like it? You like it a lot, eh? You like those expenses, right? Well, you're operating an absolute human right. And that right that you've been partaking of, right? That belongs to all the individuals of Canada. And you're guilty, guilty as can be, of taking actions aimed at the destruction of an inalienable right of a human being. Not only that, but then converting it unto your own use, creating statutory laws that transfers and alters the attributes of the right, so only the ministers and the politicians can now use the right. Guilty as can be, crime against humanity, and my eyes see you, and my eyes see your laws. The International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, Article 2. Each state party, that's our countries, that's our government, that's the people sitting in the offices of the government, each state party to the present covenant undertakes to respect and to ensure. There's the obligation. There's the legal obligation to the rule of law to ensure to all individuals within its territory and subject to its jurisdiction the rights recognized in the present covenant. Well, so you have to ensure these rights. Well, what rights? Well, the absolute and inalienable rights of the human being that are brought forth in the international covenants. That is your obligation, not to limit and abridge these rights, but to respect and to ensure them. And you are failing in your duty on purpose and with intent. This is the international order. This is the rule of law. The international order is declaring to every man and woman, you have absolute human rights that are never to be limited and abridged. And your government has the responsibility to respect those rights, to ensure those rights, to allow you to exercise those rights. It is their legal duty under the rule of law. And if they fail to perform their duty, then they are guilty against international order. They are guilty against the highest law there is, the rule of law, the principles of justice. They are guilty of failing in their duty. The International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, Article 2.2, we're not already provided for by other laws, by existing legislative, by domestic law. Each state party to the present covenant undertakes to take the necessary steps. They make the legal pledge. They take the legal obligation to take the necessary steps in accordance with its constitutional process and with the provisions of the present covenant to adopt such laws or other measures as may be necessary to give effect to the rights recognized in the present covenant. So there's the legal obligation to the international order. And there's the legal obligation to our absolute human rights, to our inalienable rights. Government agents, government offices, government powers, they must take the necessary steps to give effect to our absolute human rights. They must take the necessary steps in order to create laws that align with the international order. And if they fail to do so, which they are, then they are guilty under the international order of breaching the rule of law and of breaching the principles of fundamental justice. And this is not just words, because we further learn through this universal principle that in doing so, they are attacking freedom on the world. They are attacking justice in the world. And they are attacking peace in the world. Here's what the international order says. Here's what it declares in Article 5 of the ICCPR. Nothing in the present covenant may be interpreted as implying for any state, group, or person any right to engage in any activity or perform any act aimed at the destruction of any of the rights and freedoms recognized herein. So it's very clear, and it comes out without question. Who is on top of the hierarchy? What rules the hierarchy here? It's not domestic law. It's not the local governments. It's not the country governments. It is the international order. It is the rule of law. It is the fundamental principle of justice that is brought forth through the international order. that is the controlling mechanism, that is the controlling factor, that is the controlling power against all state parties, against the government itself, and here in Canada, against corporate bodies like Microsoft, Google, Meta, and X Corp. The justice system here in Canada also are bound to these obligations, are bound to the rule of law, are bound to international order, and any actions and any judgments that are taken that are against this order create a responsibility against the individual for the actions that they are partaking in, because those actions are destroying freedom, are destroying justice, and are destroying peace in the world. And you deserve to be held accountable for your illegal actions aimed at the destruction of the rights, aimed against the rule of law, and aimed against the international order. And all these crimes against humanity, and all these crimes against the rule of law, and the principles of justice in this digital age are freely available on the internet. To pull up the court judgments, to pull up the court's determinations that have gone directly against the rule of law through arbitrary actions of so-called men and women that are pretending to sit there and act on behalf of the rule of law when they are hypocrites and liars, when they are making determinations to destroy the rule of law. Your actions are not hidden. Your actions are exposed to all to see because of this digital age. This video was meant to help you understand the hierarchy of law and the operation of the rule of law on the earth, and to help you wake up to the fact that your local governments and your country governments are not the final authority concerning your absolute human rights. International order is, and the rule of law allows you to be free, free from impositions and free from duties that the government is trying to place upon you through their statutory law. And by forcing you into this recognition and into these duties, they are denying the international order that they are under obligation to respect and ensure.